Um, so, as part of this show, which is um, talking about, like, discussing about pedagogies, so we thought it will be a nice uh, conclusion to have a discussion on the pedagogical practices, visual art practices, and the conundrums related to that. So, as panelists, we have Indrapramit Roy. Um, Indrapramit, of course, most of you know him. And he is from Baroda. He is part of the painting department in Baroda. So when we are talking about the pedagogy, so he's the insider. And then, of course, we want to have a overall view of the pedagogy, art pedagogy, and related issues. So we have the other panelist, Johny ML. Again, he's from Delhi. You all know him. And thanks to Johny to put it up in the Facebook and all those things. So and Johny is a art critic, writer, then art consultant. He is now involved with Lalithical Academy. So they are planning to start the Lalithical Academy Contemporary again, or restart. So John is the editor of that. So with this panel, and I'm myself Jayaram Poduval. I was the curator of the show, and I come from Baroda Art History Department. So we'll start the proceedings. So I welcome Indro and Johny. So what we are planning in this discussion is that real discussion, not exactly a panel discussion. So the panelists will say things, or in the sense they present something, then we go from that, but not that way. I'm acting as the moderator, so I'm sitting in the middle, so they don't fight each other. In a safe distance, thoda udhar jao. So the first question is that when we are talking about the pedagogical practices, of course, whenever we talk about art institutions, and at present, India is going through the kind of change of art, I mean, the curriculum changes which is happening. And the main question is that whether the pedagogy of the art schools in India now is really up to the, the needs of the contemporary situations. So I'll start with Indro on the. Oh, okay. You start with. Yeah. So the inside story, and of course, Indra has studied in Shantidiketan also, and all of us actually visit most of the art schools for various purposes. So we know, I mean, all of us know about the situations and the challenges which is actually happening in the art schools now. So that's what, whether there are challenges, whether it is all going all right. Well,
no, thank you, Jayaram, and thanks to ArtMagnum and Sarai for organizing this. The conundrums are manifold, and it has been there from the very beginning. What is happening is it is becoming a little more concentrated now for a variety of factors. Now, to lay the ground of the discussion, if you look at the historicity of this whole issue, is we are often referred to as academics, and an institution is referred to as an academia. Now, conundrum starts from the word itself, because the academic or the academia that we think of have two very different models. One model is a Plato kind of model, where you treat an academy as a place where you study philosophy, where you study mathematics, where you study debating, where you study a bit of science, a bit of classical language. And this is what the sort of traditional Greek model of academia. And that is the model that most European universities followed. When it comes to art praxis, the academia that we have is the model from Academia dell'Arte, the art academies, which sort of came into being post-Renaissance, where you have a sort of, the guild becomes an academy where there are masters, then there are disciples, then they have to study apprenticeship under the masters, and then they make a masterpiece, and then finally go out in the world to eke out a living. Then, of course, the British academies, where Sir Joshua Reynolds and people felt that, artists are not just artisans, they are respectable members of the society, they need titles, they need academies, and they are, like there is an ancient model, an older model in Japan also, you have this tradition of Wenjin painters, the painters who are also scholars. But when British academic model started in India, we had guild system, or we had artist training in the royal courts. Again, a master-disciple kind of relationship, which was disrupted because the British schools, which started happening in the mid-19th century in the big cities like Madras, like Bombay, like Kolkata, eventually in Lahore, and lastly in Lucknow. These are the main centers where it opened. You have a model which is taken from the Kensington School. Now, Kensington School model is again taken from the art academies of Britain, of Sir Joshua Reynolds. If we go back, it will go back to the Academia Bell'Arte kind of thing. So those two models of what we mean by academic, and this has continued till date, because what we see now, that increasingly after independence, there are lots. The first institute that started an art school as part of a university system was Baroda. It started in 1949-50. The fine arts faculty came into being. The only other alternative model that we had prior to that was Shantiniketan, which was established in 1919. And that was offering a parallel. Now, with Baroda, what happened is that they thought about, and all these British academic art schools that we had were never part of the university system. Okay, they were independent colleges, and it was more or less treated as places where skill is developed and skill is imparted. So when Baroda started, and it offered courses both in bachelor's and master's as part of an university curriculum, the idea was that art colleges will be a sort of liberal arts places where people are not just trained only in skills, but also in the sort of intellectual development, because we are a newly independent country. We need people who are thinking, we are acting for actively participating in nation building, and only artists with skills are not going to do that job, and it needed a different model. So, and that model had taken from both British academic art colleges as well as the Shantiniketan model. And so with praxis, practice became praxis. So the difference being that there is some kind of a theoretical underpinning, there is some understanding of the knowledge of the past, there is a sense of belonging, and there is a conscious feeling in the artist that you are not just a very skilled artisan, but you are also a thinking intellectual. So this is the model, the difference. That conundrum has not been resolved, because what has happened since 1950, and we are talking about 2023, there are many universities which has now opened an art department or an art wing or a faculty or whatever they call it. Now even IITs have started, art departments, which is a lot of traditional minded people still find it hard to take. So the thing is that what will be the ideal model? The confusion persists in very practical terms. There is the two sort of major organizations, government organizations, to oversee universities. One is UGC, and within UGC you have AICTE, which looks after technical education. So is art college a part of mainstream liberal arts education, or is art colleges part of technical education? That problem is not quite resolved. That is, like in a practical day-to-day thing, this problem is persists. The other problem that I can think of is, what is the role of praxis or practicing artists in an art college? Increasingly, you see that there is a marginalization that happens of practicing artists. There is an insistence on certain formal criteria, like you need to have a PhD, you should be engaging in research, and that research is again defined by people who are not really concerned about visual arts research. So we haven't really found a parallel model. What we are doing is we are grafting a sense of PhD, a research, which is basically a writing-based research, into the art colleges, or we are expecting artists to write articles. So it's like basically asking a fish to prove that he's a good fish by climbing a tree. You know, so these kind of models are adding to the confusion. The other, I think the major conundrum that we have now is that what do we teach in art education? Because it is one of the few things where there is no textbook. You don't follow a textbook, right? So when you say a syllabi, thank you, of an art institution, a lot of it is to do with practice. Now, in the last 20 years or 15 years, there are a lot of new art institutes have come up, which have taken this to another extreme, where the praxis is marginalized and where the theory or the concept or critical studies have been given an overwhelming importance. That if you have to be an artist now, you have to have a stand, and you have to take a stand which is kind of issue based, and then only you are acceptable in the art fraternity. The other extreme of this is that you are also producing artists who are completely unconcerned about this and think that art is only about developing skill. The middle path, the balance between these two is becoming increasingly a very fraught area, because governmental diktat and the rules and regulations, the way they are being formed, is kind of marginalizing the practice within the art college setup. So to mitigate that, we have a funny thing called professor of practice. So instead of, when art colleges treated anything discursive, anything related to theory as something that, okay, it's a, you are discounting that to be part of an education system or a university system. We have come full circle where the praxis itself is being marginalized. So you need to have a special post called professor of practice, which implies that the other people who are involved in teaching are not engaged in practice, or practice is something that is secondary to their nature, not the primary thing. So these are the conundrums, and there are conundrums in the structure of the whole thing, and there are conundrums that come to the fore which has to do with the hows and whys. So on both levels, the conundrums are there. And instead of addressing it, I think we are increasingly going for a system which privileges one over the other. And by doing that, I think we are creating even a bigger conundrum. And that will be my take on this. I'm sorry about this.
No, no, I mean, on this, you have something to say, then we can take it further. In the sense, this issue of, the practice and the pedagogy. Yeah.
First of all, good evening. Thank you, Jayaram, and thank you, Saurabh, for inviting me to this session. Indrapramit actually talked from, as Jayaram said, an insider's point of view. So it was more of an academic approach, like, how the academy and academia developed and what is the kind of complex uh, layers or nuances that is existing in the whole system of art education and the practice. And the praxis, added with tinged with a bit of theories. Coming from outside, because as a practitioner of art history, criticism, art writing, curatorial practice, etc., I approach this whole idea of art history and theorizing vis-a-vis art practice by citing two examples. For example, let me take, you all know, Subodh Gupta, who hails from Patna College of Art, and another art group, Rax Art Media Collective. You are all familiar with these two sets of artists. Subodh Gupta comes from Patna College of Art, where he had once famously said that the libraries remained closed throughout the year, academic year. So when he became an artist, before he became this quote unquote Subodh Gupta, or representing the contemporary Gupta period of Indian art, he never had the kind of theoretical understanding or art historical understanding that a student could have gained while he was a student or while he was doing college education. So what Subodh Gupta gained was from his surroundings, his colleagues, his professors, and also his major involvement with the theater and the literature and things like that. So there was a kind of organic development for that particular artist, and he came to Delhi and made it. I'm not going into the details of it, and made it. And if you look at the interviews that he has given to various channels and various theoreticians or curators or various channels all over the world, you could see that this person has picked up the right kind of jargon, the right kind of wordings, the right kind of concepts along the way, which actually any successful person would do, whether it is Adani or Ambani or anybody like that, or Yusuf Ali. They pick up the concepts, they pick up the ideas, and they can articulate in a peculiar way so that it sounds theoretically perfect, theoretically complete, and also informed by history, informed of history, art history. Maybe using that particular system of expression or the construct of expression or the construct of personality, they could actually wade through the complexities of a society in which they are operating or creating their art and disseminating their art. They almost become non-committal. They need not commit about something that they are doing. Like I will cite one example where Subodh Gupta's one of the early paintings where he has painted an ambassador car, a portion of an ambassador car with the luggages on its, the carrier. And also he has painted the trolleys, the trolleys in the airports where luggages are kept. His idea is to show migration of people from Bihar to many parts of the world, or people in general. So, but it is a very clever way of doing it. Like it's a very familiar thing. For example, Adul Dodia referring to Pablo Picasso, or Atul Dodia referring to the Gangavataran by Raja Ravi Verma. So it is a kind of internal reference which is common in the cultural consciousness or cultural subconscious of the people. the audience. So it's a clever play. You can actually pose yourself as an intellectually informed or historically informed person. At the same time, you can use your naive ideas to propagate. And using the basic cleverness, they can actually survive and sustain their art in a given scenario. I'm not criticizing Subodh Gupta for doing it, because he has become successful not because of the naive people around, but because of the people who could use their great intelligence to create finance fund and buy art. So people who are buying art are not foolish people. They are very intelligent people and they know how to make money. Making money is one of the most intelligent art. It's not said by me, it is said by most of the economists in the world, but also by one of the famous artists. You know his name, Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol said the business is one of the best form of art. So, without the theoretical grounding or historical understanding, art historical understanding, or history in general, or socio-political complexities prevalent in our society, one could actually pose himself or herself as a great artist. Okay. So, I mean, definitely, once again, I have to say, because it is on record, I am not criticizing Subodh Gupta as a unintelligent artist. No, he is intelligent. But what I'm saying is, as expected from an academy, or as expected from an academic rigor, he hasn't done, or he hasn't gone through that. He took it, or he gained it along the way. And now coming to Rax Media. Rax Media presented, maybe you remember this particular work, I don't really remember the title of the work. It is a thumb impression. You remember this one? It's a huge, hanging cloth. It's a tapestry kind of thing where there is a thumb impression of a person, which is actually a thumb impression of the first person recorded who had migrated, or who had been forced to migrate to elsewhere, or Caribbean or some place, where as a farm worker or a sugarcane worker in a sugarcane farm or something like that by the early colonialists. So the thumb impression was collected from one of the libraries or one of the archives in Kolkata. The whole art or whole work of art is just, or the visual part of it is just a thumb impression, but the whole idea is about their pedagogical explanation, narratives they have built around this particular visual, this particular image. So the question is it the knowledge or the theoretical knowledge or the socio-political or socio-economic history that is built around a particular image important in understanding and establishing a work of art? Or is it just the beauty of what you call a thumb impression? So if you look at Rax Media, they are not particularly making any image per se. They are not painting an image. They are not particularly gaining skill as they are, I think like most of there are three people. They are coming from the mass comm background and they are very intelligent people. They are theoretically articulative. So their whole idea is to build histories around a particular image. Maybe that is the conceptual part or conceptual practice that we developed from the early part of 20th century, starting from Duchamp, or starting from Kandinsky per se, or even starting from from Picasso, who started the three-dimensional cubism, and Kandinsky with the breaking down of the images, which was so strong in the late 19th century, till late 19th century, and then coming to Marcel Duchamp in 1917, where he brought this this fountain, this urinal, and called it a fountain. So, talking about the work became more of a pedagogical practice within the location of exhibition or exhibiting, rather than gaining it previously from the classrooms or from the syllabus. So this is the fundamental difference or fundamental examples that I would cite in order to say that the current scenario of education, art education, all over India is, as Indrapramit rightly pointed out, that is still in a conundrum which is unresolved. Which one is actually important? Is it a theoretical understanding of the art or the skill development? So we haven't resolved it yet. But as I say that I have studied English literature. I have a post-graduation in English literature. So when people join for English literature studies, we are expected to become poets, right? We are expected to become poets or writers, but most of them become either a conductor in a bus or a what you call a clerk or an officer or an IAS officer, whatever. They go into something else. So similarly, we are not expected. All the people are not expected to become Shakespeare's or Byron's or Milton's or Shelley's or Keats. We are also expected to become something else. Similarly, in art colleges, fine arts colleges, most of the people are expected to become intellectual artists who could intellectually articulate things. So that is, I think, the societal expectation of or from an artist is what is happening, what is causing the kind of huge disappointment among the art circles. And we know very well, we know very clearly that whoever informed by history or criticism or absolutely blank about it, if you are in the financial circuit, the economic circuit of the galleries, or you are financially successful, then actually this part doesn't matter. Because theorizing is done, or its historicizing is done, or the historiography is done by the people, the curators or art historians. And I mean, that's the case of most of the artists in the late 20th century. I mean, if you look at the contemporary production of art historical tomes, volumes, you can see that that is how it is done. So it is not necessary that everybody should be theoretically informed. And it is also not necessary that one's theoretical understanding should be a kind of shortcut to make intellectually informed art out of anything. Because I think like in Baroda, Baroda is a major contributor to this this confusion, because Baroda has an art history department, art criticism department. Myself, Munal and all, we are from there. And we have been looking at art, and we have been trying to balance between this history, and art practice. But at some stage, I think like by the success of the art scenario or the art boom by the early 2000s, it became separated. Like art is taught in one way and history taught in another way. And this is like as Mark Twain said once, like East and West, the twain should never meet. Like that, these were separated in to two different islands. So that problem is still existing. I think like to connect that, we need to build bridges between art history and art critical practices, theories, with the skilled nature of the artist. And also, we should not expect all the artists should be intellectually informed, or all the artists should be intellectuals. Artists could go and work as the set designers. They can work as film set designers or some other fields. They can contribute and they develop their skills. Tota Tarani, then Rajiv Anchal, Sabu Cyril, these are all highly acclaimed set designers who have passed out from fine arts colleges. And you have examples from different colleges. They have become successful. Nitin Desai and so many people are there. There are so many of them who passed out from JJ School of Art who have become actors, Nana Patekar or Amol Palekar. So many of them, like they have become actors. So you can actually, artists can actually become something else as well. And you look at the performance art practice, from where they got this idea about becoming, after studying 5 years or 6 years, a painting, and they become performers. And the National School of Drama pass outs, they just sit around the Corollaries and waste their time, or in America or some places like that, by virtue of saying some intellectually packed performance. So we need to actually address all these things in order to understand, to connect this very relevant question that Jayaram has raised here, like this, the parallel traveling or parallel journey of theory and practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Johny. So, taking from some of the points which you both said, that, like from both your comments, I think that, there is something which is lacking is the lateral thinking. Like making a person, like for example, Sabu Cyril, or, they didn't exactly train to become, set designers, but there is an option, it was open. So, I think the art schools in general has this issue that, if you are in an art school, you are kind of expected to be an artist and all those things. So I think if we want to kind of open it up further, that, my question to both of you is that, first of all, is there any expectation of this intellectual artist thing in all the art schools? That's, because I'm specifically asking you because you have traveled all around India and almost visited almost art schools. So, that expectation of, intellectual expectation is there in art schools? That's question number one. And the other question is that, changing a curriculum, do you think there is any curriculum change which can, initiate this kind of approach of, lateral thinking?
Yeah, in 2009, actually, maybe some of you know it. In 2009, I made a project, and I took up a journey, actually a traveling project, started from Baroda, my alma mater. From there, and I went up to Shantiniketan. Along the way, I visited around 20-25 fine arts colleges, especially in MP. There are so many, where you see, as an art historian, as an art critic or curator, or anybody who is operating or active in art scene, including artists like you, we all need to be intelligent. We expect some level of intelligence. Now, I'm not talking about intellectual thing, but we need to be, when we talk to someone, we expect a certain level of intelligence from that person. We cannot talk, we are talking about, say, about Picasso, and that person's mind is playing an Amitabh Bachchan's, he's understanding it as an Amitabh Bachchan's movie or image. So there is a discrepancy between the utterance and understanding. So my basic demand at that time in 2009 was to see some intelligent way of imparting art education, both history and practice in these colleges. And I would say 90% of the fine arts colleges in India actually still, at that time, was still dependent on Herbert Reed's The Story of Modern Art. So that's a kind of very, very primary thing. Coming from Baroda, a kind of very liberal, egalitarian school of art, where Dr. Ratan Paramu, and coming to Jayaram, they all have tried to create a wonderful ecosystem through the building of physical archival materials. Today, you can just ask the AI, even in the Google search, you can ask, you can have an option of the AI, and you get information in a second, that the crux of the information which you are seeking. But in those days, when it was not even unheard of, the Baroda school had created a beautiful archives, painstakingly, literally. So that kind of background that we had, and we go out and see Mickey Mouse, some MA student, painting Mickey Mouse or Doraemon and showing us as a portfolio. That was Very disappointing. So the basic demand at that time I forwarded was, and through my writings I forwarded was, that we need not intellectual art but intelligent art. Today, I think like there is a confusion between being intelligent and being an intellectual. Intelligent people can pretend as intellectual people. That is the major problem with our art scene today. I'm not talking about the artists who are here because most of them I know personally. They are not pretentious people. They are very, they are very open people. But there are certain circles where you could see the pretension is more important. Another thing, the lateral thinking part is that we don't have any project supporting system in India. That is the major problem. We make an art project, for example, Joy, he is making augmented reality based works. Okay. Recently I saw a few works, but who will exhibit? The major problem is that. But suppose I studied in London, in the university, Goldsmiths University, London University, Goldsmiths College, where as students, like if we have a project, we can approach the council, like what we call the panchayat or municipal council here. We could approach them and say that there is one church lying unused. Please give us that space and some pounds, some money, so that we will exhibit it here, and we will self-curate, or one of the curatorial practice student will help us to curate that space or that kind of work. But here, sitting in a private gallery, which is sophisticated, which is like, which is spotless in its own activities, it's ironic, and it is slightly contradictory in expecting that we need project support, financial support for independent artists. So now today becoming a professional artist in India means like you need to completely depend on your work to sell, get money, buy house, educate your children, live a decent life, a dignified life. And when you are not able to do that, you have to diversify. You know something what is happening? Ever since Mr. Modi came to power, and I'm not talking anything politics here, but for the last 10 years, what I'm talking is that most of the young graduates coming out of the colleges are engaged in city beautification because they get their money through that. And most of the artists are doing scrap material sculptures. I mean, they just go around and get some contract from this officer, that officer, and they are earning quite well. Or they find small little jobs here and there. And it is not a new thing, like doing part-time jobs here or there and doing some commission work. But the moment you say that I am doing a commission work, like even the artists are apologetic, you see, I am doing a commission work right now, I can't show you anything. I will send you my PDF because that is my creative work. Some artists are there, like they are doing realistic portrait. And if you ask like, sir, I do modern art also. So they think that like this realistic portrait is not modern art. They mean abstract art is the modern art. So this kind of confusion comes from because they don't have the right kind of financial support. And our education institutions, including Baroda, are not teaching the students. They are teaching about Foucault, Derrida, coming up to Agamben, Zizek, and all these theoreticians they are teaching. But they are not teaching them economics. They are not teaching them the survival tools, survival kits. That is one major problem. In South Gujarat, in Vapi, I found a college, and most of the students getting graduate only for becoming lathe workers in the factories there. There are many heavy tools. So the lathe they all become lathe makers, and they don't even think about applying for a scholarship. They don't know. They don't know there is a college in Baroda, and even if they know, they don't want to go there because they know that this is a job, it's a money making or not money making, it's a livelihood making thing, So colleges are not teaching, whether it is Shanti Niketan or MSU. We call it MSU, Maharaja Sayajirao University. We call it Marriage Settling University. we fall in love. My wife Mranal is from there, and Jayaram's wife Monal is from there. So we are not taught how to make money. We are taught how to survive. And another thing, English, talking or speaking in English is a major difficult, major hurdle in most of the artist careers. Nowadays it is changed. During the boom time, all the galleries, sons and daughters became artists. They are actually educated in good schools. They can speak fluent English. They can use many accents, and they become successful naturally. It is all about the packaging. In the post-truth world, it is all about the packaging. So it is not mango, but it is Fanta. That is real. Mango is unreal. Mango is just a concept. Fanta is the real thing. So similarly, uh, when you can talk and express well, you become successful. But the real artist may not be successful only because he or she is not able to present himself or herself, and also the dressing pattern, the clothes, etc., etc. In our time, we all are kind of sort of like imaginary revolutionaries, revolutionaries like who are sporting beard and things like that. That was a different time. So now today, what I need, two things from the colleges as a part of the pedagogy is that one, communication skills, that is teaching English means like not to become PhDs in English, but to communicate, to talk about your art, to talk about the value of your art, to deal with the art dealer, to talk to your gallerist in fluent English or French or whatever stuff, whatever is prevalent here, that is English. So you have to be taught that. The students have to be taught that. One. Number two, they should be taught about economics. It is about economics. When now also you should be talking them about AI market, NFTs, and the future markets. These are the fundamental things that we need to impart as a part of the pedagogy. Teaching them, aquatint or something like some extremely technical stuff in printmaking is not really actually a thing that we need today. That is needed as a part of your curriculum. That is needed, but beyond that, you need language education, you need economic education, you need to learn about how the art market functions. You need some interesting workshops and seminars so that students could interact with the experts from the respective fields and understand. We need more tutorials. Most of the time you get a job and you are like till the age of 65 or 70, and it's like your grave is also dug there, so that part should be changed, and more expertise should be brought into the education system. That's what your take on.
Well, as is Johnny's wont, covered a lot of ground, and I don't think I can respond to all of them. But to begin with, the topic today was not practice and pedagogy, but praxis and pedagogy. So praxis implies a blending of theory and practice. That is how practice is different from praxis. So that is why I started off on that note. But this, of course, he has given some examples, and I can expand those examples to say that to become an artist, it is not necessary to go through formal education. So pedagogy can happen in many different levels. Like the Guru Shishya Parampara is also a pedagogic model. Learning by doing is also a pedagogic model. We have plenty of artists. We are a country of living traditions where there are so many folk traditions, tribal art traditions, painting traditions. I'm keeping aside the really solid craft traditions here because it is It is the biggest sector which employs the most number of people, but which is completely invisibilized in our system. But there are enough artists who have made a name for themselves without actually setting foot in an art college. Not even, going in an art college which provided inadequate education. Take, for instance, Snake Chand. What was he? He was a contractor. And he started building this in a surreptitious way, which was on the verge of being destroyed when it was discovered that this man quietly has built this in a fallow piece of land outside the city of Chandigarh with all the waste material of the project of making a city of Chandigarh. And now, today, it is one of the greatest world famous art and tourist interest place in the city of Chandigarh, apart from the Corbusier's architectures. So this man is completely self-taught. Now that apart, there are many artists who belong to the folk and tribal traditions, who have made a mark of their own, who are not just continuing with the tradition, but added their own thing, whom Jyotindra Jain calls the sort of alternative masters or other masters. And we have enough examples of those from most of the traditions. So to be contemporary, to be established, to be, a successful artist, there are enough models, there are enough people whom can be pointed out as people who have bypassed this mainstream system of education and yet made their mark. There is no argument about that. But that in itself does not lessen the importance of art pedagogy in a formal academia also. Because we cannot think of a country which does not offer art education in the higher education. So what would be the model there? That is precisely what my issue was. And coming back to that, I think there are lots and lots of things which can be done, we should be doing, and some things are also being done. And let me rectify you. We do have introduced papers and courses in writing. I teach it myself to my students in writing statements or writing project reports or preparing a portfolio and that sort of stuff, because yes, like you correctly said, there is a requirement of that. As soon as you step out of the art college, if you want to apply for a scholarship, residency, you have to give a statement, artist statement. Now, artist statement is not an easy thing to write for a person who's haven't got a clue of how to go about it. So the job of giving them a clue definitely falls back on the pedagogic model. But these are the specifics. And if you look at them, there is enough room for improvement. I was actually drawing your attention to the larger picture of the sort of conceptual conundrums that affect even the best of institutions, or best of minds, because there are certain things which are unresolved. There are certain things which are pushed, to my mind, in the wrong direction, which will be problematic in the very near future. And that is, we are looking at a crisis situation which will unravel pretty soon because the way we are going. But I don't want to bore you with, what can happen in an academia and what cannot happen in an academia. For instance, I'll just give you one example. When Baroda started, Mani Saab got somebody called Gyarisilal Verma, who is a traditional mural painter from Rajasthan, to come and assist him and join the painting department. He has no degrees, he barely passed school, and eventually retired as a lecturer in the university. the kind of structure that we have made today in the name of quality enhancement is that those kinds of people are completely debarred from setting foot as a teacher in an academia, because there are so many paper requirements that you have to tick, which makes it very difficult. So on one hand we are doing it, on the other the new education policy is insisting that every art college needs to introduce something like, traditional workshops, invite people, invite local artists, invite folk artists, invite tribal artists to give demonstration to the students. So on one hand, what could have been a natural process where you can widen this is being stopped. On the other hand, you are making a formal structure which is obviously not on the same footing as a regular teacher, and this kind of tokenism is seen all around. So if you are just, it's like museum visit, yes, done, tick. Now what have you done in that museum visit is something that one needs to look at, right? You go to any museum in India, you see troops of school kids passing through the museum, not looking at anything. There is nobody who's making it interesting to them, nobody explaining what these objects are. They just pass through it, come back, they have to fill a form, museum visit on such and such date. Yes, so many students have gone, so many teachers have accompanied, your job is done. The paperwork is done. Now, that is not what any education is meant at. So we are extremely consciously moving to a model which is very much to do with the form of it, and the content part is kind of taken out. So it is kind of vacuous. So that is something that one has to be very careful about. And in any academia, especially, like I said, art education is something that doesn't have very definitive rights and wrongs. It doesn't have a textbook. So the model of teaching art is very different from many other mainstream subjects. And it's not just about giving either skills or informations. It is something very experiential. And the effect of that, and then there is again a stress on the outcomes. What is the outcome? You are teaching this course, you immediately have to tell and define that this is the outcome, which is again goes against the very core of nurturing a young mind, which is nurturing it to think in creative ways. Is very right. We often call that an art college is a professional space. But is it a professional space like a medical college, that everybody who passes through it becomes a doctor or a researcher in medicine? Is it a professional course like a CA degree? Is it a professional course like a law degree? No, it is not. What it does is that it does imbue, it should ideally, whether it does or doesn't is an open question. And there are colleges and there are colleges, there are institutions and there are institutions, and they're not necessarily on an even keel. But what is the ideal? The ideal is that, of course, you take it for granted that everybody who's coming out with a BA degree in painting is not going to be a professional painter. And I don't care whether the degree is in painting or whether the degree is in fine arts and visual arts or whatever you call it. The nomenclature thing, I think, should be kept aside. What is the ideal that we are looking at? Anybody who gets a master degree in visual art, does that mean that they will all become professional artists? No, not necessarily. Like he quite rightly said, there are people who go into many other kinds of creative professionals. And that is the beauty of it, that you do get maybe 10%, 15% who persist and who survive by the dint of their intellect, by the dint of their intelligence, by the dint of what they've learnt in an art education institution, and of course by what they have learnt themselves. even in an institution. I have never for a minute believed, and I am very thankful to have many colleagues who will agree with me, that art cannot be taught entirely in a studio system. You cannot. There, you have to create an environment where different aspects are nurtured. Like, I mean, I'm sorry, but I'll give a very specific example because this is where I've been teaching for the last 28 years. That we have not only encouraged people to go and visit artist studios, exhibitions, museums, but also brought people who are professionals to come, constantly a stream of people who will come, interact with the students, present their works, and have workshops. Then you have a literary club, you have a film club, you have a theater club. Now, what is the need for these things? They are not trained to be, professionals in writing. They are not training to be, theater or film personalities. But it was felt that to make this environment enriching, you need to have this environment which is fulfilling to different aspects of creative needs. And it is not just about teaching how to paint well or giving you a whole load of theories where you are negotiating through only critical theories and you have no hands-on knowledge. So the question is to find the balance. And I don't think either this model or that model is a perfect model. There will be some institutions which emphasizes more on this. There will be some other institutions which emphasizes perhaps a bit more on that. But having said that and accepting that, I think ideally we should be striving to create an environment and an atmosphere which is enabling, which is not telling you what not to do, which is allowing you to do and grow in ways which suits you. And that, of course, no institution can preclude people who have bypassed this whole system and still made it. So there is no gainsaying by saying that that doesn't exist. Of course that exists. That existed in our country in a very big way, and that will continue to exist, and it has existed in countries which has very fine art colleges also. That there will be people who are not part of the system and yet made it. This whole thing about outsider art exists because none of these people have gone to a professional art college or an institution of higher learning, and yet they are recognized as fantastic creative professionals with no peers. And that happens, that keeps happening, but that is not to take away the importance of the academia. Within the academia, within this praxis and pedagogy, there are two kinds of problems. One is the praxis that leads to pedagogy, and pedagogy that leads to praxis. Because every art college is also a place, like I read it in a book by Ted Ermont, and I think it is a very intelligent quote that said that the same art colleges that make new artists also make past artists. So we know the story that, somebody who starts teaching finds it's very difficult to find, it's very difficult to run with two rabbits. One is your professional work time and the other is the teaching responsibility. And very often you give up on your practice. And then one work or two works circulate in some group shows just to fill in one line in your CV that, okay, this year I had taken part in these shows, and eventually that also stops. And yet you are supposed to be training the new artists, the new generation of artists. And this is a reality. And this, we have to, does that mean that there aren't any professional artists who come out of art colleges? Everybody, at some point, at least in the previous generation, had a second job, because nobody could rely only on selling their art and making a living, at least till the years, that time they reach their mid-50s or 60 ability. But if we make a system where we ask that, okay, those who are teaching in an academia are going to be a different cadre from those who are practicing as practicing artists, and we will only allow a very small percentage of them to come and teach as professors of practice. I think we are heading for a very difficult and crisis-ridden time. So the encouragement that is required for both to happen, that a pedagogue who's teaching has also enough time to do his or her own research and his studio practice, and for the students also, that it's not a choke-up block that you are doing 20 different things in a day and you don't have any free time to think and do, is not, it cannot be a model. It can be a corporate model. It can be a sort of profit-making model, but it is not a model to nurture and develop a creative mind. And increasingly, our university systems are veering towards that. And that is, I think, the biggest conundrum in these two issues that we have today, is praxis and pedagogy.
So I think, I mean, of course, we cannot resolve this issue because it's a kind of burning issue. So I'm sure the esteemed audience also has some questions. So if you can, we can take 2 questions max, because Sarai is saying no, we should. So anybody wants to ask question, please. Please raise your hand. I can, pass on the mic to them. There's no conundrums more. So many, yeah, of course, yeah. So anyway, this, yeah, sure.
So this whole discussion just took me back to my architectural days. So as you know, that's also very much part of the art pedagogy setup. So in those days, there was a very interesting thing our college used to do. So what they used to do is that you create spaces. So architectural design is all about creating spaces, three-dimensional models, etc. So we had this special thing where we had to conceptualize it. So they would teach us, how to express what you have made. So these professors would encourage us. They wouldn't tell us what you're doing, but they would ask us to express, in whichever way. So it could be any language. I definitely don't think they were telling us that express in English or that ways. So they would just say that whatever is convenient or comfortable with you, share with us, how you have tried to achieve this form that you've created and what's the basis. That was a great thing. So I think hearing all you guys, I think it's time for the art education thing also to have some makeover. Not follow the same structure that has been going on for ages. Maybe introduce new subjects. For example, abroad, what they're doing now, there's a course for curation. There's a course for curation, which we don't have. I don't know. At least I'm not aware of a curatorial course that is existing in India. So similarly, these assisted courses will be a great help, and subjects, if you can add, where you can encourage artists to express. So that gap that we're talking about between expressing and creating and theorizing and learning on the way. There's different ways of achieving art. So I think that's an interesting thing which you guys can weigh on.
No, actually, the curation, we don't have a course on curation, but it is part of the course now in abroad. Johny comes sometimes in Jami also. So now there are things changing slowly in the sense, even as you said, the juries, So earlier the system was something, but now in most of the art colleges it's the jury. So they get the chance to express and talk and all those things. So there are certain curriculum changes happening. But the thing is that, I think from there, both this thing that, like for example, in most of the art colleges now they have the system of internship. So they go and work with an artist, say for 2 months or 1 month. 1 month they go and work with an artist or a, artist or a craftsman or anybody they can choose. And then that experience is definitely it is reflecting onto the, yeah, they have to write a report also, and then they'll express that how that experience of internship actually helped. So those things, I mean, slowly there are things which is evolving. But again, the problem is that it is evolving in one place, but it's not evolving all over. So, I mean, there's also something which the government is also saying, that unifying the art education, which is not a good idea, because each school has its own, strength and nature and everything. So, I mean, I don't think we should have, mechanizing it and creating all one square. It's not exactly a good idea regarding art. I mean, in architecture also, because wherever there is aesthetics and subjectivity comes more, there you cannot exactly structure it like what they are trying. But yeah, the challenges are still on. Any other questions?
I'd like to respond to that. Yeah. Just a minute. Yes, you are right, very right, because there is a very important aspect of hands-on learning, but there is also an important aspect of expressing yourself. And what I never tire telling my students is that learn to talk, because you cannot talk about everything in a painting. That is a given. If you could write about everything in a painting, you would become a writer. You wouldn't be painting. So it's a given that there will be certain things which are inexpressible. But there are lots of things which are expressible. And if you express them, you clarify your ideas. So the practice of speaking and learning, which was for many years looked down upon, that मैंने तो आर्ट बना दिया, अब देख लो, आप interpret कर लो अपने हिसाब से. But the fact that you are building on something and you want person who's looking at it some kind of a entry point is very important. For a long time it was assumed that, oh, that is the job of the art critic or the art reviewer. It's not the artist's job. That's not the case anymore. Number two is that in your initial years, you expose people to techniques. You will never get to the book that you want because there are thousands of books there. So that also needs to be taught. So there are many things. I'm not going into those details. But the learning to defend your work, learning to talk, learning to write, these are very important skills and they are increasingly important. And so that model has already changed. But like he said, it is not something that is happening across the board. It is happening here, it's happening there. But that is a model that needs to be discussed, that needs to be explained, that needs to reach out. Where is the forum for that? I may do anything in my class and I may do things which are very forward looking, but am I being able to reach out to other institutes? No. And with more and more rule-based things where the template is already given, my contention is that you are actually narrowing down the scope of doing that because you are leaving no free time to explore that. I'll give you one simple example. We used to have this art fair in December. Now with the new semester system, all examinations happen in December. And it is the best month to have an art fair. Now how do you have both of these things? You see, we had a term system. So there was no intermediary examination which is conducted by the university, which worked fine. One fine morning you are told that no, this system has to go. You have to conform to a semester system, which meant that there will be a half-yearly university exam, which basically takes 1 month away from both your teaching learning process and devotes it to entirely examining, which means basically distributing marks. Now, has there been an audit of whether this system is better than that? No, not yet. It is just a diktat that has come from top that, okay, this is how it should be done, this is how it is, and you follow this. So these are daily problems. But we are not going into the nitty-gritty of it to bore everybody to death. There are many issues like that. But the bigger problem is also the philosophical problem of what art education is and should be.
Johny wants to respond to.
No.
Yeah, please.
Indro partly answered the question. My problem is then when you, Johny was saying that one should know how to talk about art. My problem is if one is already talking art, isn't this a very gallery-based pressure? Because when you talk about art, it becomes easier to sell. So I don't think this should be an artist's job really to be talking about his art, because then he's going to get, he's doing visual art, he should be needing verbal support for that. And you should actually be, from school days, the curriculum should be of some art history or something, so that general people who are non-practicers are aware about images, image practices, and things like that. Well, I have a doubt that if artist starts speaking and writing about his own work, he's going to somewhere go haywire and dilute his own visual practice. For example, Morandi, what will he talk about? Is it just a still life? But it's not just a still, it's something else. So if you start writing about it, you're actually narrowing down the whole image and not letting people discover their own contact with the art. So it's a very delicate balance where, and lately what I see is there's so much talk happening about art that once I saw a work, some artist was doing something with the honeybees. So I thought it was an ordinary image, but she knew there are 5 types of images and she knew the whole zoology of bees and everything, which I thought is not important for an artist to know or tell. She should be talking, the image should be saying, okay, this is the problem the bees are facing, this is the problem, So, yes, Indra did partly, but I would like to have your take also on it. Thanks.
Yeah, actually, when an artist actually creates an image, for example, G. Raghu's works, that doesn't need much of Raghu himself talking a lot about it. We can simply understand those are two heads, male, female, simplified, minimal, etc., etc. But when a particular image or a particular object is created or object is found out and brought into a different location, that is the gallery site or an exhibition site, if there is nobody to give it a verbal support or a narrative support, sometimes the artist himself or herself has to talk about it. So this is where I will connect the previous question or previous statement about the curators. So today, most of it's slightly derogatory when I say it, like people don't really like it, but I have to say it as the question is like that. Many galleries whom I helped during the boom time to establish their galleries and curate the shows and create a kind of intellectual environment about the show, the gallery, the artists they present, etc., etc. Later on, at some point, started believing that if X or Y, who calls himself herself a curator, could do it, why shouldn't we? Because we are also doing almost what they are doing. But they are not understanding that it is not just about gathering a set of works and hanging on the wall with or without the help of an exhibition designer and writing something in a catalog and publishing a catalog. So the gallery started thinking that we can, suppose if we call our artists, they will give the work. We have an in-house designer, so that person will display. And we have designers, they will design the catalog, they will publish the catalog. So they started calling themselves curators. that is where the deterioration of our intellectual space for the curatorial practice started. And curatorial practice is also taken as a monolith most of the time. Because if you open Hindustan Times or Times of India, you can see that the word curation is seen in every report, especially in the page 3. You know, like a food festival curated, dress festival or the fashion festival curated, DJing curated. Actually, DJing, assembling and curating, these have some kind of an intricate connection between each other in the whole aspect of doing the presenting the work. But when it comes to a work of art, the art history is extremely important, which a gallerist or a kind of person who could manage the the collection of works, display of it, or even publishing a catalog, may not be aware of that history part. And a curator is also a person who has an immense vast knowledge about multiple practices and multiple knowledge systems. So we have curator, a person who devotes himself completely into curatorial practice, theoretical practice, and does curatorial practice. And we have artist curators. If you look at the Kochi Musri's Binale model, you can see that the artist curating, right from Bose, Riaz, then Sudarshan Shetty, Anita Dubey, Jitish Kallat, and so on, Shubhi Raut, the latest one. So artist curators are there. Then suppose if we are looking at a particular project where Rembrandt's anatomy lesson is taken, because it has something to do with the medical practice. And if we look at the artists who have done such kind of images where incision is done on the human body, things like that. So such images. Maybe a doctor, a surgeon could come in as a surgeon who is taking interest in art could come in as an interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary curator there. So we have a vast area to curate, or when we curate something, we have a very huge area before us. But we have made it into a sort of monolith that anything which is brought into the gallery and made a narrative around it is a curatorial practice. Unfortunately, most of the time, artists are also claiming themselves as curators. And as you said, artists could keep quiet. And it is not necessary that they should keep quiet. They can talk elaborately. But suppose if I am a doctor and there is a problem with me and I start doing my own surgery, then I think there is a problem in there. You can actually consult with another surgeon so that he will perform a surgery on me. Similarly, a curator is a pivotal player in organizing exhibitions or presenting exhibition, especially when the contemporary art objects, as you said, where artists may or may not talk much. So I could say that, I am the third person who got a Charles Wallace Trust Scholarship to study curatorial practice. The first one being Bose and the third one being me. In between person, I don't want to mention that person's name. So I have done a post-graduation in curatorial practice, and the kind of education I got, I tried to practice with the help of Mrinal. We did a lot of projects, we did all the unconventional things, in the sense which could go beyond and away from galleries. But eventually, during the boom time, everything zeroed in on actually presenting works in a gallery. That's what earlier I said, curatorial practice actually needs practical ecosystems, supportive ecosystems, so that we can create a lot of alternative spaces. But in India, generally people are not aware of the rich people, especially who are actually the patrons of art. They are not aware of that. They could also actually become the curators of what they buy. Suppose if what is happening, if somebody is buying a Hussein or a Sousa, then every rich person in this country is buying a... No, it is not gallery. No, that's what it's... This is why I earlier said the person, the people, the rich people are not foolish people. there are some, but I know investment that in art scene also, in curators also, it is there. But what I am saying is that they could become the real patrons in actually finding the kind of artists of their liking, and supporting them, supporting alternative practices. But you see, Jeff Koons, the biggest artist today in the world, Jeff Koons started. He bought two vacuum cleaners, kept it on a vitrine or on glass box, and kept it on a showroom. And he just said, "Let it be there," and say it is a work of art. And that was the one major work actually launched him. And he was a very good talker. He actually is like Osho, who could actually sell nothing to anybody. He's a good speaker. So we have talkers, we have speakers like Joseph Boyos, Duchamp, all these people.
It doesn't really mean that the piece of art was good.
But you know, yeah.
Ultimately, history will tell you what was good or
Yes, but in terms of influence, like you look at the kind of TikTok influencers and people like art scene influencers, millions of people are influenced.
so which is popular.
Which one?
TikTok is an instant gratification, so it has to be popular.
Yes, but at the same.
Art is not going to be that.
Yes, I understand.
What art is going to become like that.
Yeah. One second. I want the last.
TikTok is instant gratification. So we don't want art to become like that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we don't need to. Yeah.
My danger is, my problem is that it just might. Because if you start, you just said he's a good talker. If you start talking so well, it's like there's a famous photograph doing the round. It's just a tree. It's a plain image shot with a horizontal camera. And then there's a whole story about it, how the tree is diseased.
Yeah.
Come on. Is this a botany lesson or a art? So you understand what I'm trying to say? Because now there's a 1,000 word article along with the picture.
Yeah.
But then I think if you just remove the picture, the message is
You
there.
better go to a library.
Yeah, the message is there. You don't really need that visual.
Exactly. So, that's why I said.
So
the
I
wax
would
media thing.
rather have the visual so strong and just 3 lines just to direct the onlooker that what really I'm trying to do. That's it.
Yeah, but at the same time, we should accept the multiplicity of the expressions that we are 145.
Can I say my 2 bits? I couldn't agree more with what you just said. But like once Shiv Kumar said, that there are artists and there are other artists. And there are, take an example of a writer, say Amitabh Ghosh, writing on the Chinese wars that the Brits did. Intensely researched books, those 3 books. Without that information, that book could not have been written. On the other hand, you have stream of consciousness writing, which does not require that kind of meticulous research. It is more to do with, how the flow of your thought is going.
Yeah, fine.
Okay, now there, James Joyce, there is Amitabh Ghosh. Can you say that one is a bigger artist than the other? Because there are all kinds of things. So you are absolutely right. Sometimes the image speaks so eloquently that you don't need anything. And sometimes you are forced to say things because ek bite de do, ek statement de do. There is actually in one of these instances, I remember Atul Dodia refusing to give a statement because he kind of said it doesn't need it. But then there are other artists. I have enough examples in my life. I have read 7 pages on ecofeminism and then given images of mermaids swimming in the sea. Okay, so that is one extreme, but the other extreme is also that I walk into this exhibition and I see these things, little itsy bitsy pieces of ceramic sculptures, ek imli idhar, ek which looks like a roti there, one piyaj ka tukda, they scattered all over the floor. And I thought, ye kya hai? What is this person trying to make? And then I read the chota sa 4-5 line ka, there was a introduction to the work, and I realized that this is a person who is talking about Dalit food. Now, without that information, I would not been able to enter into that work.
So you are
And then it makes a different kind of sense because you see it in a different light. So that little bit of info.
So yeah, it has to be little. That's what I said. Just point the audience to that direction. And
Thousands
it's
of
done.
word is not required. But see, the trouble is that you are thinking about art, visual art as entirely visual. But if you look at lot of conceptual practice, they are not so visual. They are conceptual where the visual is perfunctory. So what do you do with such words? So that is why I'm saying that art in an expanded field has become such an amoeba-like thing. It has taken on so many areas which traditionally you wouldn't associate with art. Archiving, for instance. History, for instance. You know, think about Vivan's project in Victoria Memorial, that history project. It incorporated history, it incorporated archiving, it incorporated a particular worldview, it incorporated installation, it incorporated film projection, it incorporated so many different aspects of it. It is a sort of thing that attacked your senses, all senses. Now, you may think that this is not art. You can come out and say, okay, I had an experience, but it is not an art experience. That's up to you. But though that, if you accept that that is also art, and like a very wonderful image of one redwood tree by Ansel Adams, is it does not require one word. Both will have to stand.
I think we will.
No. Actually, there was no question. It's okay. We can discuss that.
Yeah.
No problem.
Okay, the questions will remain, and it's nice that the questions should remain in the minds. Thank you very much, all, for coming, and I thank Saurav and ArtMagnum for this wonderful discussion. Thank you very much. Good night. Thanks.